Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a super exciting video because today I will be sharing 22 knitting patterns that are perfect for scrap yarns. So I don't know about you, but in January that is always the time to set goals for my making, and one of my goals for this year is to get rid of some scrap yarn, which I think is always a really nice goal to have, but this year especially I just want to focus on that. So I thought it would be really fun to share some knitting patterns that I think are really nice for scrap yarns. I basically have all of the categories here today, so I really hope that you're going to enjoy this video and my recommendations. Then I also just quickly wanted to mention what I'm wearing because I usually get one or two questions about it. So this is my Vivienne vintage cardigan. This is one of my own patterns, and I think it was only the second knitting garment pattern that I released last year. And it's just a really beautiful pattern. It's one of my favorites. It's not the most popular one, but for me, I think maybe it's number one. Because I just love a beautiful big puff sleeve, which this one definitely has. And it's also knit on 5mm needles, so it's quite a quick knit. So I will link that pattern down below if you're interested or just want to have a look. And without further ado, let's get started with the video. So the first pattern that I've chosen is quite a popular one, and I think a lot of people already know it, but I thought it deserved a mention because I didn't know of this pattern until I started to look for patterns for this video. So this is the Cozy Comfort Throw by A Homespun House. That is knit with 2 fingering weight yarns held together on 5mm needles, which I think is really great because a lot of scrap yarns that I personally have are scrap sock yarns or like mini skeins for blankets, etc. or advent calendars, and I think this is a really nice one. You could probably make something like this without a pattern because it is super simple, because it's just a striped garter stitch blanket with an I-cord border. And there's not much to it, but for some reason I just really like it. I also really like all of the projects that I saw on Ravelry already. And there was actually one in particular that I'm considering doing with maybe my advent. And it was somebody that was holding the yarn together with a white yarn, and then it created more of a really natural fade, and I thought that was really nice. And then another blanket that I really like is the Jelly Roll blanket by K.F. Jones. This one is knit on 2.75mm needles, which honestly, that does not sound very appealing. But it is nice that you can then hold your fingering weight yarn on its own without having to, add more yarn. And I really like this blanket in particular because I think it really looks like a quilt. And of course a jelly roll, I don't know if you're familiar with sewing or quilting, but a jelly roll is also a type of fabric roll for quilting, which I think is why they decided to name it like this. And I think it's just really fun and it can be really scrappy. You can also be really intentional with all of the colors. And then the whole blanket is kind of knit in a modular way. So you're kind of piecing everything together as you go, which is always a really fun knitting experience. And then I have one more pattern for your home, which is a pillow. And this pillow is called the Aalto Pillar by Georgia Farrell. And it was originally featured in a book by Rowan. I think it's called Rowan Geometric Homeware. And that book actually has a lot of nice patterns for like pillows and blankets, etc. that could also work really well for scrap yarn. So I would definitely give that a browse on Ravelry. But this pillow in particular is knit with sport weight yarn on 3.25mm needles. And I just think this one is really unique. I think the color work in here is also quite simple. And I really like that it's not like a square pillow that you see very often, but it's a round pillow. And I feel like this is just very Anthropologie vibes, which I personally love that brand. And I really think this is very chic. Then the next category that I have some patterns for are cowls or scarves. So I actually have 4 of those. The first one I think is also very much intended for scrap yarn, and that's the Sea Glass Cowl by Willow Pine. And it's really fun because I'm actually now reading that it's designed to accommodate 5 different gauges. So you can use anywhere from 3.5mm needles to 5mm needles, so I think that's really great. So you have options here to hold fingering weight yarn on its own or even use iron weight yarn, and I think that's like really perfect. So really there are no limitations with this pattern and you can use any type of yarn. There's one of their versions that has a lot of like pink and blue and basically like all colors thrown together, but I still feel like the pink is like the predominant color, and I think that looks really nice. I don't remember the last time I wore a cowl, but lately I have been getting more interested in them, and I think it could just be a really fun knitting experience as well and great for scrap yarn. Maybe even I could make it and gift it to someone. Then the next pattern for a cowl is a really fun one that maybe I have mentioned before because I'm absolutely in love with it. And it's the Winter Bob's Cowl by Laura Menendez. And I'm pretty sure she designed this in collaboration with Bichet et Bushes, which is a yarn brand that I've yet to try. So this is in particular knit with their Le Cotton and Alpaca blend, which is a bulky weight yarn. So this is knit on 5mm needles. But if you're looking for a similar type of yarn, then I would say like Drops Air or Viking Garn Alpaca Briz or even Katja Cotton Merino would be very similar. But of course I think this could very well be worked with scrap yarn, which is how I was kind of envisioning it. So you could do a DK-weight yarn held together with a mohair or just like a blown yarn like I was talking about. And yeah, like I'm saying, it's just a tube and I think it will be a really nice and simple knit. Probably really quick and easy to make as well. So this could also be really nice for gift knitting. And the next pattern that I have is a really fun one and it's from Wool & Beyond. And I just wanted to quickly mention also that Wool & Beyond actually has a lot of nice knitting patterns, specifically I think for scrap yarn, and they're very fun and artsy, like very different to my personal style. But I think you can work around that and still make something that is really like essential to you if you just choose the right colors, etc. So the first one that I've chosen from her is the Stripes Galore Bandana. And I especially love that it has two different stripes. So it has one set that kind of goes like this, and then the other ones are horizontal. So it mixes horizontal and vertical stripes together. And of course also different colors. This one is knit with sport weight yarn on 3.5mm needles. And she uses about 5 different colors of yarn, so I think it could be a really nice scrap buster. And of course I think you can use however many colors you want, add more or add less. And it's a really fun one, and I think I would be open to making this, but there are so many patterns out there, sometimes I have a hard time deciding. But I just thought this one definitely deserved a mention. Oh, I forgot about this one, but this next one is also super fun. This is a Before Bloom Bandana by Anna Husema, which is knit with a fingering weight yarn on 3mm needles. And the Intarsia just has a lot of fun and geometric design, and then the rest of it is garter stitch, which is always fun to work up. So it's kind of like a Sophie shawl or an iteration of the Sophie shawl, but then a little bit different and definitely a lot more unique and perfect for scrap yarn without making it look very scrappy. Like, do you know what I mean when you're just like striping everything and it tends to look very scrappy? Like, this is very intentional, and that's what I really love about this pattern. Then I don't know if you've noticed, but hats and bonnets or balaclavas are very popular right now. So I decided to also include some of those. So the first one that I've chosen is the Brat bonnet by Le Pool. This one is knit with a super bulky yarn on 3.5mm needles, which is quite interesting. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with the yarn. It's Fluff from Hip Knit Shop. But I specifically chose this pattern because I think the checkered board pattern in this is really unique and fun. And I also love this like bonnet because it's very vintage inspired. Like the shape of it, this is very like classic, maybe like 60s, 70s. And I especially really love that aesthetic and time of clothing. And so I would love to eventually make this one myself, I think. She definitely chose like very bold colors, but you can again like play around with this. I also really like the little bow that it has in the front. And yeah, it's a really great one. And then the next pattern that I chose is actually also by Le Pool Knitwear. And it's one that is more like typically scrappy. So this one is called the London Bonnet, and it's knit with 10mm needles with a worsted weight yarn. So that is very interesting, very bulky. This would be like super quick to knit, I think. And this one, like I said, it's just like you can just throw any type of yarn together and stripe it, and it still looks really fun and scrappy. This is definitely a certain type of aesthetic. Like, I'm not sure if her specific sample is something that I would personally wear. But I think if you were to choose colors that are more in a similar color palette, for example like all beige and then like maybe some gray or something, then it could be a lot more like classic and personally like something that suits my style better. And I think you can really play around with that. You can even like limit it to 2 different colors and just stripe that in a like regular repeat of stripes and just have a good time. And then I also have another pattern by Wool & Beyond, because I did say that she had a lot of nice patterns for scrap yarn. So this is the Out of Line beanie, and this one I just thought was so unique, and I keep actually looking at this beanie and trying to kind of wrap my head around the construction, because it's very interesting, because it has some type of definitely like Intarsia stripes, because the stripes on the head are kind of like offset from each other and then also split down the center, which is just super interesting. Then it also has a different stripe like sequin on the brim of the head. And then on top of that, it also has a really cute I-cord detail, I think, that then kind of goes around the head on one side, which I'm not sure if I love that detail, but I think you can just skip it if you are not a fan as well. And it's just such like an intriguing pattern to me. I think it's very interesting. And it's knit with an Aran weight yarn on 4.5mm needles. And it does come in 2 sizes as well, which is really nice. And I just really like it. There aren't a lot of projects with this on Ravelry, So it's a little bit difficult to kind of like find inspiration for it in my opinion, but I thought it still deserved a mention. And the next hat pattern is actually one that I would love to knit, so I've definitely added this one to my favorites, and it's the Positivity Beanie by Tori Yu Knits. This one is knit with a fingering weight yarn on 3.5mm needles, and it comes in two sizes, so a child and an adult size. And this one is quite simple, it's just a 2x2 I think ribbing, and then with some really fun smiley color work, and it's just like really happy and really fun. And I would love to have this in my knitwear collection. It's a little bit different for me as well, like it's more, I don't know how to describe this sense of style, but it's more like fun and quirky kind of. And I think it would be really fun to just play around with it. And it's small, so it's just a little hat, and it's not like committing to a whole sweater. That is not really my like typical aesthetic, if that makes sense. The next up, I actually have some bag patterns. So the first one is another pattern by Wool & Pine, and it's the Whidbey bag, which is a really fun like construction. Like this bag really reminds me of the school bags that I used to have when I had to go to the gym. That type of construction. And it also has a really fun like dot color work, it almost looks like, but I'm not sure like completely what it is. But I think it's really nice, and this could also be a really nice one for a project bag. I'm not sure if I would like wear this as a purse, but I think for a project bag or a bag that you carry other stuff in is really nice. So this one is knit with a DK weight yarn on 3.5mm needles. And it actually has some really interesting key features. It says no sewing, no color work, no lining required, and all yarn weights are welcome. So that is very interesting. And they also have some video tutorials, and yeah, I think this is a really great pattern. I was kind of unfamiliar with Wool & Pine before doing this video, but they are definitely a brand or like designer that I would love to get to know more of, because I think their designs are very interesting. Then I have another pattern by Le Pool, which is the Apollo bag, and I chose this pattern because this is just like really fun and really scrappy, and I think this could be really fun if you're looking for a bag pattern for the summer festivals that are coming up. Then this is definitely one that I think could be really fun. So this is like a garter stitch a garter stitch bag that is knit on 4.5mm needles with a bunch of fingering weight yarn held together to create an Aran weight. So again, this pattern I think would be super quick to knit. Then it also has an I-cord as the strap, I think, but it also, or it's some type of braid, I'm actually not really sure. But it's a very interesting bag handle. Oh, it actually says it's macrame, so that is very fun. Again, sadly, there aren't a lot of projects yet on Ravelry, so you can get a lot of inspiration, but from what I can see, it's a really nice pattern, and I think I would like to make this maybe one day as well. But again, this one is not really my style. I'm not sure if I would wear this a lot, but it's still really fun. Then the next one is a little bit more my cup of tea, and this one is called the Sheringham bag by Claire Slade. This is knit with a sport weight yarn on 3.5mm needles. And I think this one would be perfect for a project bag. I again would not really use this bag as a purse. I think knitted bags in general are a little bit tricky to use as purse, especially if you're not gonna do a lining. Then this is also one of those like bucket bag styles, so I think that is also a lot less convenient and easy to use than a purse with a zipper or like button closure. But I really love this pattern in particular for the fan and fan stitch, I think is how this stitch pattern is called, when it has like this wavy texture. I think this is a really good one to have striped. And like I said, this could be really fun as a project bag. I definitely am open to knitting it like that. And then it also has a little I-cord that then is drawn through the top, so you can kind of cinch it in and close and open it. And it's a really cute one. Then we are finally at the sweater category, which maybe is the most exciting one, because who doesn't love to knit a sweater, right? So the first one that I've chosen is the Hilma sweater by Johanna Garish, I think is her name, or also known as Colibri. This one is really nice for mohair scraps, which I really wanted to include some patterns that I think are good with mohair scraps, because for some reason mohair yarn is something that is always left over after a project, and I tend to have a lot of scraps in different colors. And this just seems like the perfect pattern to kind of combine all of those scraps and get rid of those, but it still looks very cohesive and intentional and not particularly like a typical scrappy project like some of them that we've seen in this video so far. So this is actually knit with 3 lace weight yarns together, so probably 3 mohairs on 6mm needles, so that will be very quick. Then it also comes in 9 sizes ranging from an extra small to a 5XL, which is for a finished bust circumference of 111 centimeters to 174 centimeters. And it's intended to have 20 to 30 centimeters of positive ease. And I love this pattern. I think I'm going to save it to my favorites now because I think eventually maybe I would want to knit this one. And this is going to be Intarsia colorwork just at the front, and the rest is just striped. So that is something to keep in mind, but if you've never done Intarsia before, then I think this could be a really nice beginner project as well. Then the next sweater pattern kind of reminds me of that back pattern that I showed earlier by Wool and Pine. So this is the Funfetti raglan by Andrea Gone. This is knit with a DK weight yarn on 4mm needles. And then this one actually comes in 10 sizes, so it has a finished, or it's designed to fit a body with a bust circumference of 75 centimeters to 165 centimeters. So this is a very size inclusive pattern, which I did try to do my best to find patterns that were size inclusive as well, because I always talk about that in my videos. And this is a really cute pattern because it has a really fun color work pattern that is very easy. I think it's just knit one in one color and then knit the other one in the other color, but then it's kind of shifting, and then there's also a main color stripe in between. And it's just like a birthday funfetti type of sweater, and pretty nice also. If you've never done colorwork knitting, then I think this could also be a really nice pattern to begin with. And then in their sample, the stripe sequence is a little bit more predictable. So for example, it goes from, let's just say like 4 of the same colors that are kind of repeating each other. And I think this pattern in particular would be really fun and easy to have like each stripe in a different color, and it would still look very intentional. This could even be really fun to knit as a fade, I'm thinking. I think that could be really fun. I might have to do that one day. Then next up we have a cardigan that again has a really fun stripe pattern. And I chose this one in particular because I've never seen stripes done this way. So it has a really big stripe pattern on the front and the back. But then it also has a saddle shoulder with another stripe sequence. So the stripes are smaller. And then they of course continue really nicely into the sleeves. And this creates just a really fun and quirky look that you have different stripes. So this is called the Waldo sweater by Emma Dutcher, and it's knit with a fingering and lace weight yarn held together to create a DK weight yarn on 4.5mm needles. And then this one also comes in 9 sizes. For a finished bust circumference of 93.5 centimeters to 175 centimeters. And there are quite a lot of Ravelry projects for this one, and I've really loved seeing everyone's like color combinations. And it's just a really fun pattern, and I also didn't really know this designer before. Let me see, she does have a couple of other patterns. So yeah, it's always really nice to be able to find new pattern designers this way. And I think this one is a really good one. Then the next pattern is kind of dear to me because it's from Knit Collage. And Knit Collage, I think my second or third sweater that I've ever knit was from Knit Collage, because they do a make along, I think twice a year. And they have a bunch of video tutorials for their patterns. So if you are a beginner knitter, then I think Knit Collage is a really great thing to try out. And their style is really nice. It really is very like Free People and Anthropology-esque. And I really appreciate that. So this pattern in particular is called the Willow cardi, and it's designed by Laura Gurvitz. So Knit Collage, I think they design their own patterns, but then they also have some regulars that design patterns from them. And then you can also sometimes admit a design to them, and then they might choose it. So this one is knit with a worsted weight yarn on 5.5mm needles. And I really like this specific stitch pattern because this is again one of those wavy stitch patterns that I think is really nice and 70s. Of course, their samples are knit with their yarn, which is the Knit Collage Serenity. It's a type of boucle yarn, but I think still if you decided to knit this in a different yarn, that could still be really fun. And of course you can just buy the pattern as is, so that is really great. Unfortunately, most people on Ravelry in the projects, they did use Knit Collage their yarn. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, this could be really fun just with like a boucle yarn or mohair yarn held together, multiple strands. That could be a really nice cardigan. And it's also actually knit sideways, so it has a really interesting construction as well. Then the next garment pattern that I have is one that is again so interesting and fun and unlike anything that I've ever seen before. So this is the Vertikal by Emilia Jensen, again a designer that I was unfamiliar with. This is knit with a lace and a sport weight yarn held together to create an Aran weight yarn on 4mm needles. And this cardigan is just super fun and interesting. First of all, it has a really cute front button band that really transitions really nicely into the stripes. Then it doesn't have a particular big collar, so that also creates a very chic cardigan. Kind of like those boucle cardigans that were very popular last year. And then the main feature of this cardigan is the design that is at the bottom of the cardigan. So it kind of has a triangle shape that is then knit in stockinette, which I'm so curious and intrigued by the construction of this sweater. I would love to know how they made this, and yeah, I might just have to knit this to just see and learn, because I just think it's so interesting, and I really love when people are like so creative and really make something that is so unique. And like, this had to be quite difficult, I think, to design, and I think that's definitely, yeah, very impressive. And this cardigan is also knit sideways, so they say it's knit from sleeve to sleeve. And then they work in a round, then they also have a lot of short rows. I don't know. I think their construction right now doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it's kind of one of those patterns that you have to actively work on to be able to understand really the construction, but it's super interesting. And then the final cardigan pattern that I've chosen is the Scrap Cardigan by Pope Vergara, which is also Pope Knit. And this is a really fun pattern designer that actually knits with beads a lot of the times. So that is super interesting. I'm not sure if this one had beads as well. Let me just check. I think it doesn't. But it's super fun because this cardigan plays with a lot of different textures and stitch patterns whilst also doing stripes. So this is just super fun and super scrappy. And I think scrappy patterns suit the bohemian style quite well. So I think that's why I decided to lean more in that direction. Because I think you either go like really fun and really quirky, like Le Pool Knitwear and Wool and Beyond, or you kind of go in a more bohemian sense of direction. So this pattern is knit with a DK weight yarn on 5mm needles, and then it comes in 4 sizes from an extra small to a large. And I think this one is very oversized, and it has a finished bust circumference of 102 to a 124 centimeters. So sadly, this is the first pattern that is not size inclusive, which is quite sad. I'm not sure why that is. It does seem like something that could be graded to fit more sizes, but you never know what their reasoning was, although I still don't think it's okay to like design so inclusively. But it is a fun pattern, and I really like also the little shoulder detail that it has. And yeah, if you happen to fit these sizes, or maybe if you're willing to make some adjustments, then this could be a really fun pattern to knit. And then the final pattern category that I have are tops. So I only have 2 of those, but they are really fun. So the first one is called the Modular top by Juana Roman, I think is how you pronounce her name, because she is Spanish. I'm now seeing that this pattern is only in Spanish, so that was my mistake. I think I'm just gonna share it now anyways, because maybe you can translate it, or maybe you're Spanish. It's a really fun pattern because it has a different set of stripes on the front as it has on the sides. And I think there's a theme in this video that I really like it when scrap patterns have like this kind of different stripe motif combined. I think that is really fun, and it makes it very different from just having like a regular striped sweater, like the sibling sweater from Laura Penrose or the Olga sweater by Petite Knit. Those are really beautiful patterns, but they are a little bit more expected or predictable, I would say, which is not a bad thing, but I think you know what I mean. And this one is really fun and really different. Again, a really interesting construction. So if you want to venture out and translate this pattern, or if you're lucky and you speak Spanish, then this is a very beautiful top. Knit with a fingering weight yarn on 3.5mm needles, and it comes in 7 sizes. And it actually now says that the English version will be available in early August, but this pattern was released last year. So it should be available already, but I'm still not quite sure because in the language section it only says Spanish, so I'm not entirely sure. Then the final pattern is again a pattern by Anna Huseman, because this is just super beautiful. So this is the Intarsia top that is knit with a DK weight yarn on 3.25mm needles. And I just really love this, and I think Intarsia knitting is very interesting. It's definitely something that I've done. When I first started out knitting, I did some Intarsia, and since then I have not really knit anything Intarsia. So maybe it's time to start doing it again. I do know that it's a lot of yarn management, so that is something to keep in mind. But if you're willing, then it could be really fun. And actually, from what I can see from the Ravelry photos, it has some different versions of like the design for the Intarsia that you want to do. Then this top also comes in 9 sizes for a bust circumference of 84 to 152 centimeters. But that is the intended bust circumference, so not the finished bust measurement. And I love this pattern, and I think I really want to knit a pattern from Anna Huseman this year, because I think her patterns are very beautiful. These are very artsy. I don't know. Could I describe it like that? Do you know what I mean? It's like an art form, her patterns. It's so artistic to be able to design something like this, and I just really appreciate her sense of style. and also just the sense of colors that she uses. She uses a lot of nice colors combined together, and I just think they're very beautiful to look at, and they're probably really fun to knit as well. Those were all of the knitting patterns that I wanted to share with you in this video. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram at mippythelabel. For now, I wish you all a very happy day, happy knitting, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!